Hey happy gardeners, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. I'm Fionuala and I live, work and garden in Zone 9B just outside of Petaluma in Northern California. And it is springtime. It's springtime at last. Feels like it's been a kind of a long winter, but who am I to complain? We live in a fabulous part of the country with the most beautiful weather, and today is shaping up to be really gorgeous, which is making me think about spring even more. And what is one of my favorite things about spring is that clematis starts blooming. I absolutely love clematis, and these queens of the vines, they've been our specialty here at Cottage Gardens for pretty much ever. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, because they are pushing out new growth, they're budding up. I'm super excited about them. So I really couldn't think of anything else to talk about today. So here we go. Let's talk about clematis. One of the things I love about them is just their vigor. They look wispy, they look delicate, but they're not. And there's a lot of varieties that are actually really pretty easy to grow, given the right conditions. So here in Zone 9B, what a clematis really wants is afternoon shade, shaded roots, regular moisture, and to be planted in good, rich, deep, organic, fabulous soil. They also like relatively frequent feeding, because think about it. Think about all that growth they're pushing out, all those buds they're producing, all those flowers are going to open up to give you. They need to be fed accordingly to get the results that you really want out of your clematis. So clematis in general, give them afternoon shade, rich soil, regular moisture. One more thing I really want to focus on today, because of a family friend of ours who's limited to gardening on the balcony, is I wanted to really talk about clematis that you can grow in containers and how to do it to get best success. He's had a really good time putting together a vegetable garden, and he's limited to certain space, and half of it is shaded in the afternoon. So we were thinking a clematis would be perfect. So yeah, we're going to talk about clematis in general and clematis varieties that are perfect for containers. Let's talk about containers for a minute. Containers come in all shapes and sizes. Like we were saying before, you want to pick what your deck, balcony, or patio can manage, and then pick your clematis. So just for an example, you can actually grow a clematis in here, but you're going to want one of the really short ones. It doesn't want to get too big, because this is how much root space it's got. And you picture that root space, you're only going to get so much growth. But you go on up to one of the larger pots that you see over there, you can do an awful lot more. Your options are really expanded. You can go to a clematis that can get up to 10 feet tall in a container that big. With the right soil and the right care, you can pretty much grow almost any of the ones that you want, apart from the Montana varieties or the Armandii. So clematis are pretty versatile in general, as long as you give them what they need. And there's a number of varieties that are really good for containers. But let's backtrack a little bit. First of all, what do you want from your clematis? What do you want from your deck, your patio, your balcony? How much space do you actually have? How much weight can that deck or balcony actually handle? That's when you start picking out the actual container that you want to grow your clematis in, after you've already made sure that you've got afternoon shade in that spot. So start with your container. How big a container can you handle? How big a container will look good on the patio or balcony? Start there, and then come shop for your clematis. There's a number of varieties that do seem to be better suited for containers than others, namely because they stay relatively small. You can grow a Montana or Armandii in a very large container, but most balconies can't handle a thing like that, because it's super heavy. Decks might have a little bit of trouble too. So start with your container, then shop for your clematis. Today I'm going to show you how to plant them up in containers. The two that I picked as my absolute favorites is Boulevard Samaritan Joe, which I've talked about before, and then Crystal Fountain. Gorgeous little clematis. This one's all budded up and ready to just show off for spring. So I'm going to show you how to plant them in just a minute. If you've chosen the other way around and you've really got your heart set on a particular clematis, check to see how big that is going to be and find a container that is going to support the roots of that clematis. So I've got Boulevard Samaritan Joe here, and I'm going to give it a fairly large container. And I've got Crystal Fountain here. Doesn't get quite as big. And I'm going to try it in a hanging basket this year. Let's talk about containers again for 1 minute. I'm going to try one in a hanging basket. It is lined with plastic to hold moisture in, and it's got wire and moss on the outside, and it will be in the shade, but the concern with this one is it may dry out a little bit quickly. So it's going to be an experiment this year, and I'll let you know how it goes. I have a feeling I'll be putting more moss around it to hold even more moisture in, but I'll let you know how it goes. We're going to keep an eye on it. Ceramic is fabulous. Clay is even better. Stay away from plastic if you can for a bunch of reasons, but one is it dries out really, really quickly in warm weather, and you really don't ever want the roots drying out. The main thing that you really do want to make sure you've got is excellent drainage. You never want your clematis vines sitting in wet, soggy soil. They really, really don't like it. Good potting soil is important. And then when I plant up a clematis in a container, I always add a little ultra bloom at the same time, because blooms are what we're aiming for here. You want a lot of vigorous growth, but blooms are really what we grow clematis for. I'm sprinkling a little bit of ultra bloom in the bottom of the hole. This container is about 14, 15 inches wide, which I think is really going to be good. The soil is good, rich potting soil. But one thing you always want to do with the clematis is to plant them deeply. So make sure your container allows for deep planting and room for those roots to expand and grow and fill up the container. I'm planting this little guy deep. What I like about planting in this raindrop here is that the struts of the raindrop allow for that clematis to climb up, but the gaps between it also allow for it to spill over. I am really expecting spectacular results. We'll keep an eye on it, and I'll let you know how it goes. But I don't know if you can see, but I am planting this little guy deeply. Its root ball was already moist, which is very important. You don't want it going into the container dry. You don't want to stress it any more than it's already being stressed. Plant it nice and deep. Let it look gorgeous. I'm going to press it down. Clematis are one of those perennials or vines that you can actually cover the crown up a little bit. Most plants don't appreciate that in the slightest, but a clematis actually responds really well to it. Deep planting, good rich soil, a little bit of ultra bloom, and something for it to climb. I could have centered it ever so slightly better, but you know, I know it's going to sort itself out. If your clematis is a bit younger and not quite as vigorous and as full and lush as this particular one is, you could pop in a couple of other hanging plants that also like the shade. This guy is not really leaving me much room, so I'm not going to do it. But you know what looks super good with clematis vines would be one of the sweet potato vines like a dark colored one, or Dichondra Silver Falls. Both of those would be amazing choices. And both like afternoon shade just as much as a clematis does. So there we go. I've got this gorgeous crystal fountain planted nice and deep, very firmly, good rich soil. I'm going to keep it in afternoon shade, and I'm just going to let it go, and I'll keep you posted how it does. Crystal fountain is one of those gorgeous doubles with really intriguing flower form, and it's an absolute stunner. And in the ground, it doesn't get any taller than 5 to 6 feet around here, so it's perfect for this one. This is about 3 feet, and then it can go higher on a hook if it feels like it, and it can spill over. I cannot wait to see how this turns out. For moisture conservation, it's always a great idea to mulch around the roots of your clematis, whether it's in the ground or in a container. So I'm going to add a little bit of microbark here. It's going to make it look good, but far more importantly, it is going to conserve the moisture. Anytime I water this mulch is going to help keep it in. It's going to help shade the roots even more. And it'll stop any weeds popping up too, which is always a good thing. Yeah, doesn't it look good? Doesn't this look amazing? I mean, it already looks amazing. Just imagine it covered in blooms. Oh my goodness. All right, for the next clematis that I'm going to pot up that's great for containers, I've picked my favorite, which is Boulevard Samaritan Joe. I like the name. You know, the Good Samaritans, they're called Samaritan Joes. And it's a really cool way of honoring goodness, I think. But apart from that, it's absolutely a gorgeous clematis. The blooms are, how do I even describe them? They're like silvery pink edged with magenta, and then the anthers in the middle are like gold and citron, and it is seriously one of my favorite clematis anyway, but it's particularly great for container because it's pretty tidy. It's incredibly floriferous. I mean, it just produces flowers for months on end, and it's really easy to grow. It's just, I mean, one of those foolproof clematis. If you're just starting out and you want to try one, this is the first one you should really try. This is just so easy to grow. So we're going to put this one in this container. It's a little bit deeper because Samaritan Joe gets a little bit bigger than Crystal Fountain. So I've chosen a container that can support the root system that will allow it to grow up a little bit taller. Do the same thing. You're going to plant it deeply, covering up the roots, covering up the crown. And really, there we go. And you get, I'm going to leave the bamboo stake in here until I figure out exactly what trellis or obelisk or spiral or cone I'm going to give this guy. You saw the one over in our clematis area already. I've grown it on a spiral. It is so, so happy in there. I'm going to pick something different for this one. I haven't decided quite yet. I may even end up putting chains on this and letting it climb up that way. I'll let you know how it goes, but same thing. Plant it deep, good rich soil. I had already put the Ultra Bloom in there, and top it off with microbark. That mulch is really important every time, everywhere you plant a clematis. One of the great things about growing plants in containers is it really expands your gardening space. You've got a balcony, like our friend, or you've got just a deck or a small patio, and you think maybe you cannot garden anymore. Well, that is not true. There's a wealth of container types, sizes, and there's a wealth of plants that you can grow in containers. Container gardening is a whole thing, and I think it's fabulous that they've invented clematis vines that stay nice and tidy and that we can grow in containers. So no more shady balcony with nothing lovely on it. No more shady decks with nothing gorgeous growing in it. grab yourself a beautiful container, pick your favorite clematis, and get growing. All right, so as soon as I find the right support for this one, whatever I decide on, at that point I'll take away the bamboo stake really, really carefully, unwrapping it super carefully. I don't know if you know about this, but the way a clematis climbs is using its leaf petioles. So it sort of wraps itself around. It's really cool. It's very different from anything like a runner bean or any of those other twiners. Its little leaf petiole wraps around the support. So as soon as I find a new support that is just perfect for this container and this clematis, I super carefully unwind those little leaf petioles from the bamboo stake and wrap it very carefully up its new support. Sometimes you need to use a little tie just for a couple of days until it finds its own way. I'll keep you updated, okay? Okay, we've talked about soil, we've talked about a little bit of fertilizer, we've talked about mulch, potted up 2 different kinds of relatively compact clematis in 2 different types of containers. And now I'm just going to tell you about light. You want afternoon shade and you want the roots shaded, and we'll talk about moisture. Regular water is vital for clematis. They get a little dramatic if they're not watered regularly enough, but excellent drainage is also really important. So you want your soil consistently moist, but never soggy. So just picture that moist as a wrung out sponge sort of idea, or a wrung out washcloth kind of idea. That's the kind of moisture level you want to maintain for your clematis. Pruning. Let's talk about pruning for a second. So what we recommend for almost all of the clematis that we grow here at Cottage Gardens is pruning twice a year. Once after that first flush of blooms, and the other pruning right at the middle or end of January. You can look at it the other way around. Once in January, once after that first flush of blooms. Same thing for container grown clematis. You want to do the exact same type of thing. You can see these little buds here. They're going to open up. They're going to be blooming probably all of April and May. So June or July is going to be a pruning session. I'm going to cut it back by half, and I'm going to feed it then. Same with this guy here. There's buds on it already. This beautiful Boulevard Samaritan Joe. Buds on it already. They're much smaller, so I would imagine it's going to get cut back July or August. But same thing, cut it back by half at that point and feed it. Feeding it with Ultra Bloom at that point is great, or a good 16/16 type of fertilizer, because it's going to be pushing out a ton more growth, ton more blossoms for you, and they're going to bloom all over again September and October. It's absolutely stunning. Now, because these guys are grown in containers and any other container grown clematis, you want to keep an extra eye on the moisture, and also they probably need a little extra side dressing of fertilizer somewhere along the growing season. Just keep an eye on them. Foliage generally tells you what it needs, but of course you can always give us a call, ask questions, send me pictures, whatever you need to do. Let's make sure you get growing clematis successfully, because honestly they are so rewarding, so beautiful, and you're absolutely going to be thrilled to bits when you've got your first flush of blooms on your first clematis. I guarantee it. Hey, so thank you so much for watching today. If you liked this video, like it, subscribe, share with your friends, but even more importantly, come on into Cottage Gardens, grab yourself a beautiful container, some great potting soil, and your new favorite clematis. So like, subscribe, share, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, find me at Cottage Gardens, and happy gardening!